Guys, right to go? Very good.
The Prime Minister apparently has just estimated the cost of the lockdown to the national economy to be between $10 and $12 billion. So what level of responsibility does the state government Victoria have to take for that?
Well, Nick, there's costs all over the place, whether it be in dollar terms or in funerals. I'm not going to be trying to put a price tag on this. This is what we have to do. We have no choice. We have no choice but to reduce movement, reduce case numbers. Otherwise, this won't be 6 weeks, it'll be 6 months or longer. And we'll have to continue to bury people. We'll have to continue to deal with an economy that is essentially closed. If there was another way, then we would pursue that. But there is simply no alternative. We will not see these numbers reduce sufficient for us to open back up again unless we take these heartbreaking, difficult but completely necessary decisions, and that's why I've made them, because there's simply no alternative.
Were you surprised by that figure, 10 to 12 billion?
That's not a number that I have seen before. Again, I haven't seen the Prime Minister's comments. The ultimate thing here, though, is you can try and put a price tag on where we are right now, or you can then you could focus your efforts on the many tens of billions of dollars that will be the attendant cost. It'll be the cost of being shut until we get well into 2021. Ultimately, we've got to fix this health problem, and once we get that fixed, get that down to those very, very low numbers that we think we can keep a lid on, then we can start to open up again. That's the ultimate choice. There is not the luxury of being able to choose an effective health strategy at the moment and one that would see economic growth. That's just not on the table. That is not something that is available to us. And I'll put it to you that I think the economic cost will be far, far higher if we don't get these numbers down. And that's why we're making these difficult decisions, and that's why we're all working as hard as we can. And that's why we're very grateful to Victorians who are doing the right thing. We urge all Victorians to join them in doing the right thing, following the rules, seeing this through. It's not easy, I understand that. It's very, very challenging. But it's our only option. It's our only way forward to get to the other side of this. Ultimately, I'm accountable. I am accountable for the decisions that are made. Today's numbers are proof positive beyond any doubt that this strategy is working. This is the lowest daily case number for a very long time, and it's not so long ago that we were reporting not 5 cases, but 725 cases. Well, with the greatest of respect to Catherine Bennett, she's not the Chief Health Officer. She can have views, lots of views. I've got to say to you, I'm not getting into this modelling debate again. I'm just not. We've got a series of decisions that have been made. This strategy is working. The numbers are coming down, and there are aggregate benefits that come from each and every one of the different measures that we've taken. They're taken on health advice. That doesn't mean that every health professional, every person from public health across the world would necessarily agree with every decision we've made, but you have to call it. You have to call these things, and that's exactly what we've done. Well, what's the issue, Rachel? Seriously, what's the issue? Why is it such a massive issue to have to wear?
It serves no health purpose if they're not in
that's
contact with another human being.
Well, that's an esoteric debate, really, isn't it? That's not really like, and if maybe there'll be a time when we have the luxury of having those sorts of debates. Ultimately, I'm accountable. I am accountable for the decisions that are made.
Are you aware of any such proposal having been agreed upon at about 1:30 that private security would be used for the purposes of enforcing mandatory self-isolation?
No, Ms. Elliott.
Are you aware of any circumstances that might have been a basis for Mr. Ashton to have received that information or received that impression that a decision had been made?
No, I'm not aware of anything personally that would have given rise to Graham Ashton drawing those conclusions.
And their evidence was not only that they were aware that a decision had been taken, but that they themselves had not been consulted. Does it strike you as unusual that a decision about enforcement would have been made without consulting the Chief Commissioner of Police or the Police Minister?
Well, that would certainly not accord with custom and practice that I've observed throughout my time in public life and throughout my time as a Minister of the Crown and throughout my time as the Premier of this state.
Are you able to recall when you became aware that the front line of enforcement for the program being put in place was going to be private security guards rather than some other mechanism?
Ms Elliott, I can't point to a specific meeting or document, but I'll take you back to my answer earlier. I announced these arrangements, at least in broad terms, on the 28th. So I must have been informed of those final decisions prior to then.
Do you recall whether or not you had an opinion?
No, I don't believe. Well, I can't speak to whether I did. That is some time ago, and I've no recall of having a specific view one way or the other. Ultimately, I'm accountable. I am accountable for the decisions that are made.
The hotel quarantine inquiry has delivered a brutal assessment of the bungled program, blaming it for the deaths of 768 people. On top of that, the inquiry says the fiasco was responsible for the infection of more than 18,000 people, unleashing the desperation and despair of our second wave.
It was meant to keep us safe. Instead, it killed people, hundreds of them.
The failure by the hotel quarantine program to contain this virus is, as at today's date, responsible for the deaths of 768 people and the infection of some 18,418 others.
Rushed and shambolic, it was more focused on restraining people rather than the virus.
It remained, first and foremost, a program for keeping people detained in hotels as a matter of logistics and compliance, rather than a health response that was designed to keep returning travellers safe.
In closing submissions, counsel assisting found the health department didn't pay enough attention to the core objective, infection control.
DHHS did not sufficiently bring to its management of this public health emergency the health expertise which had been the basis of it being allocated.
And all because of the decision to use ill-equipped private security guards, a decision it seems made by no one.
It's a conclusion that was arrived at by way of a creeping assumption that took hold over a period perhaps of a couple of hours and that wasn't questioned by anyone.
A creeping assumption apparently influenced by Victoria Police.
Victoria Police's clear position expressed in that meeting that private security would be, in its view or its preference, the appropriate first line of enforcement, has to be understood as a substantial contributing factor to that creeping consensus.
The inquiry flagged the government may have broken the law, breaching its own human rights obligations. At the very least, there's no doubt where the buck stops.
The program should have been accompanied by intensive, ongoing monitoring and auditing. The Victorian government failed to adequately ensure that this was done.
Ultimately, I'm accountable. I am accountable for the decisions that are made. I'm confident that those three public servants are acting appropriately.
But the inquiry heard that they weren't.
I'm aware what the inquiry said. I'm aware what the inquiry said, and I'm aware what submissions were led by counsel assisting yesterday. You've asked me what assurances I've sought. I'm indicating to you that I'm confident that those three public servants, indeed all public servants, are acting appropriately.
I've already told counsel assisting that she should find that your three key public service chiefs failed to keep you and key ministers informed about major problems in hotel quarantine that have claimed 768 lives and caused more than 18,000 people to become infected. Why do you need, I mean, is it even, given those findings, is it appropriate for you to maintain confidence in those people for
Rachel,
another 6 weeks?
Rachel, if I want to be as respectful as I can. You've just put it to me that findings have been made. No findings have been made.
I said that
Yes, you
counsel
did. You said
assisting had recommended
No, I'm
to
sorry,
Judge
Rachel.
Coates that
Rachel.
she fined.
Rachel, it is my practice to listen very carefully, and what you just put to me was that Judge Coates had told. She said nothing.
No.
She said nothing. What's more, you just put it to me, and I'm happy if I've interpreted your question wrongly, or if it needs to be rephrased, we can go from there.
I told you what counsel
You just put it to me that there'd been
told
findings
Judge Coates
made.
She should find.
Well, we didn't actually say that.
Assisting that she should find, that she should find, that she should find.
You've just put it to me that findings have been made. No findings have been made.
I said that
Yes,
counsel
you did. You said
assisting had recommended
No, I'm
to
sorry,
Judge
Rachel.
Coates that
Rachel.
she fined.
Rachel, it is my practice to listen very carefully, and what you just put to me was that Judge Coate had told. She said nothing.
I told you what
You
council
just put it to me that there'd been
told
findings
Judge Coate
made.
she should find.
Well, we didn't actually say that, but in any event, let me go back to the first point. Well, Rachel, you didn't, and if you're going to put something to me, then I'm entitled to respond to it the way it's put to me. To do otherwise is one of these games where, in a couple of hours, I'm having all my words put back to me that I've somehow answered a question wrongly or I've been inconsistent. So accuracy matters. No findings have been made. Submissions have been made. No findings have been made. And it is not for me to tell Judge Coate what she should find. That is the role of counsel, but no findings have been made. So we'll respond to the findings when they are made. And that will be, and if they're made, that's entirely a matter for Judge Coate. As I've said a few times, I will wait for the report. You don't set up an inquiry to then essentially preempt or put yourself in the place of that inquiry. I've not acted that way, and I'm not going to start acting that way now. We will wait and see those findings. Whatever recommendations are made, whatever they may be, we will deal with those when they come forward. Ultimately, I'm accountable. I am accountable for the decisions that are made.
Now, the Police Commissioner has said that he hopes that this new $5,000 fine will be a deterrent that will see fewer of those parties from now on. He's also asking Victorians to tell police if their neighbours are doing the wrong thing.
You can call it dobbing in neighbours. I'd call it just doing the right thing to try and stop the spread. It's actually calling out selfish, arrogant, ignorant behaviour. When you put number 5 with 3 zeros next to it, it is such a significant hit to the pocket that people will say it's just not worth the risk.
And Laurel, there's something of a bizarre situation about not being fined if you actually have COVID.
This is a strange one, Jackie, and even the Premier admits it's counterintuitive. But basically, people who have COVID found they're doing the wrong thing will not be fined, because what they don't want to happen is people be dishonest with them and not tell them where they've been and who they've seen and what they've been up to because they're worried about being fined. Let's take a listen to the Premier.
Their positive diagnosis and their story about who they've been in contact with is worth infinitely more than $5,000.
So it is something of a surreal situation, but we do know that contact tracing will be absolutely critical as we go forward to get on top of any future outbreaks very quickly, and hopefully then we can open up as we all want to in 3 weeks' time.
Ultimately, I'm accountable. I am accountable for the decisions that are made.
The arrogance of Andrews and his team has resulted in preventable deaths, the destruction of Australian businesses and billions more in debt. Well, there was a news poll last month that indicated 61% are satisfied with Mr Andrews' handling of the coronavirus, and his personal satisfaction rating is still at 57%. Is the Premier's arrogance and incompetence matched only by our indifference? I suppose George Bernard Shaw, the famous playwright, had Daniel Andrews in mind when he wrote, and I quote, "He knows nothing and he thinks he knows everything. That points clearly to a political career."
Ultimately, I'm accountable. I am accountable for the decisions that are made.
But look what happens when you try to hold him accountable.